a government shutdown has been averted for now after a last-minute deal on Capitol Hill over the weekend. But the big question today is, could it cost House Speaker Kevin McCarthy his job? Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz says he is prepared to force repeated votes to oust McCarthy because he worked with Democrats on this deal. Here they are trading words yesterday.
I do intend to file a motion to vacate against Speaker McCarthy this week. I think we need to rip off the Band-Aid. I think we need to move on with new leadership that can be trustworthy.
This is personal with Matt. Matt voted against the most conservative ability to protect our border, secure our border. He's more interested in securing TV interviews than doing something. So be it. Bring it on. Let's get over with it, and let's start governing.
NBC's Ali Vitale joins us from Capitol Hill. I also want to bring in two former congressmen, New York Democrat Joe Crowley and Florida Republican Carlos Curbelo. Thank you all for being here. Ali, what exactly is Gaetz threatening to do, and just how rare is this?
Look, he's threatening to do what he's been threatening all along, which is oust the speaker, and he's able to do that because of the agreements that McCarthy made to get this job in the first place. I'll take you back to January during those 15 rounds of balloting. These were some of the concessions that McCarthy was making with some of the hardline conservatives in his party to get the job. It included critical seats on things like the Rules Committee, promises of how they would do various budget and spending packages. That's at play here. And then, of course, giving any one of his members the ability to launch a motion to vacate. Matt Gaetz, at the beginning of this budgeting process, ahead of the conversation of how they would avoid a shutdown, said explicitly on the floor, if McCarthy looks towards Democrats and does this in bipartisan fashion, he was going to launch a motion to vacate. Now you see McCarthy there, perhaps emboldened by the fact that he tried a bunch of different avenues to get a shutdown averted just within his own party. People, including Gaetz, but not just limited to him, continued to thwart that. And so McCarthy had to do this end run on Saturday morning, pretty much surprising Democrats, but ultimately they helped him to get this over the finish line. Of course, more Democrats voting to avoid a shutdown than Republicans at the end of the day. But this is always where it was going to end up. I really do feel that if it wasn't on this one, it would be for another reason, that Gaetz would have to finally make good on these threats that he's been making. The open question, though, is A, if it will succeed, B, if Democrats will help McCarthy, especially some key frontliners. That seems a little implausible for a lot of reasons, especially because you don't do something for nothing in politics, and there would have to probably be a conversation around concessions from the speaker. Those conversations have not yet happened. And then, of course, there's the big question, which is, if not McCarthy, then who? And I don't think that there's an easy answer to that in the halls of Congress right now. And until you have that, I don't know what you have here.
So our Marissa Pera was in Gaetz' district over the weekend talking to voters. Let's listen.
Shutdowns are always political, either side. You know, it doesn't really have much to do with Matt Gaetz. I partially agree with what they're doing because we need to get the southern border closed.
So, Congressman Curbelo, this is your home state. Headlines over the weekend suggested Gaetz' gambit could help him in a potential governor's race. Is this just about one man's political ambitions? And who do you think wins this feud?
Anna, today this is about Matt Gaetz, but really for the last 6, 7, 8 years, the House Republican Conference has lived under this threat. John Boehner had to deal with this. He ultimately resigned when he was threatened with a motion to vacate. Paul Ryan had to deal with this, even though the House was a little more stable under his leadership. And now Kevin McCarthy is having to deal with it. So Matt Gaetz represents this chaotic movement inside the House Republican Conference right now. But this is an ongoing problem. And this week, presents an opportunity not just for Democrats, but for a lot of centrist Republicans to establish a reliable governing coalition. This is not about bailing out Kevin McCarthy. This is about allowing the House to work its will. This is about the 350, 400 members of the House who want to work constructively, who want to work collaboratively. And this week, those members will have an opportunity to band together and to make a difference. We'll see if they take it or if this is going to play out the way a lot of people expect it to play out, which is that maybe some Democrats step in to prevent the House being thrust into chaos, or maybe they don't.
Well, let's ask Congressman Crowley about that, because if there is a vote to remove McCarthy, it could be kind of awkward, I would imagine, for Democrats. I want to play with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said about it.
I do not intend on voting for a Republican Speaker of the House, but I believe that it's up to the Republican conference to determine their own leadership and deal with their own problems. But it's not up to Democrats to save Republicans.
Congressman Crowley, do you think if this motion is filed that Democrats would help McCarthy keep his job?
Well, I appreciate the Congresswoman's response. It is not the job of Democrats to elect a Republican leadership. Having said that, though, I think Democrats should just keep their powder dry. Right now, we've seen what has been dysfunctionality turn into full-blown civil war, open civil war amongst the Republicans right now. And, really, in many respects, what Carlos has just talked about, this is something that John Boehner dealt with and what Paul Ryan dealt with, where Democrats had to come in and not on one occasion, but several occasions, save the Republican conference from self-destructing and destructing the government at that point as well. So I do think that these are incredibly interesting times to be there, to say the least. But it is not the job of Democrats to elect the Republican leadership. And I think Democrats should sit back and take this all in for a while.
Obviously, Speaker McCarthy is not in an enviable position any way you look at this. Congressman Curbelo, this deal to avoid the shutdown only funds the government until mid-November, so kind of kicks the can down the road. Will things be any different in a month and a half, or are we just in for the same kind of drama?
Well, Anna, I think what happens this week will help determine that. And again, there's a big opportunity here for centrist members, both Republicans and Democrats, to band together and kind of take over the House. This is a power vacuum in the House. This is something pretty rare in the House. The House is a majoritarian institution. The Speaker, in most cases kind of acts like a dictator. This is an exception. So there's a power vacuum here, and it's going to be up to the members to decide if they want to keep themselves in this position, if they want to keep operating in a House where there's only one armed faction, which is these conservative hardliners, or if other members are going to take up arms, so to speak, and start making a difference and start trying to be protagonists as opposed to spectators watching what the Freedom Caucus is going to do next.
Congressman Crowley, one of the key sticking points that remains is the funding for Ukraine. It's not part of the short-term deal. Here's Senator Chris Murphy, who sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. Take a listen to this.
I'm concerned by the fact that when it came down to it, the only demand that McCarthy was willing to give into that was coming from his hard right was the demand to abandon Ukraine. And my worry is that if we wait until the middle or end of November to have this conversation about whether we're still supporting Ukraine, it may be too late for Ukraine by that point.
Is the senator right to be worried?
I think there is room for worry here. I think when you look at the Senate, you see bipartisan support for Ukraine. Mitch McConnell has been overwhelmingly supportive of Ukraine and the funding thereof. And it's a growing concern within the far right, but just the Republican caucus conference writ large. Their lack of funding, support for funding going forward. And it was interesting. It was the only thing that was pulled out of the spending bill. So I have concerns here. I think America has concerns as well. Do we support democracy or do we not around the world? I think that's the big question here.